Okay. We've talked about this a bunch this week with the Falcons because it's starting to manifest itself that there are things that are attainable all of a sudden that didn't look attainable. The class of the NFC, the teams that we thought were the class of the NFC are really, really struggling. Now, again, you're only 6 games in. You've got 11 more of these things to go, and a lot could change. But through 6 weeks, you have a pretty good sample size that if some of these teams that were the class of the NFC don't get things fixed quickly, there are other teams that are going to rise behind them. And the Falcons certainly are one of them. But the four teams that I think most people thought were the class of the NFC coming into the year, the Rams, the Buccaneers, the Packers, and the 49ers. I had the 49ers in the Super Bowl this year. Um, Even with Trey Lance, I thought that they had a great shot to get there because of their coach and their defense and their play calling and things of that nature. But these four teams are struggling mightily right now, mightily. And they've opened the door for other teams to get in, particularly, again, Atlanta. And just look at those records of the four teams that we're talking about. Packers are 3-3, Buccaneers are 3-3, Niners are 3-3, Rams are 3-3. A lot of 3-3s out there. They've played mediocre football, which is why they are where they are. And oh, by the way, of those teams, the Niners are the only team. I'm sorry, the Niners and the Buccaneers are the only teams with a positive point differential, which is always a good indicator of how well you're playing. Now, should the Falcons be able to take advantage because they're also 3-3? When you have 6 3-3 teams vying for what are 7 total playoff spots and they're across 3 different divisions, yes, some of those teams have a better chance to get in than others just because they're in a division that might be more amenable to doing it. But you know, you look at the Falcons; their 3-3 record is masked behind the fact that they're 0-2 in the division already. I mean, the Carolina Panthers have a division win and the Falcons don't. You want to talk about tiebreakers? They failed to beat the Buccaneers and the Saints. Beating the Bengals this week is nice, but it's one of those deals where, I mean, hypothetically speaking, if the Saints win on Thursday Night Football tonight and the Falcons lose to the Bengals, both teams are 3-4, yet the Saints would be above the Falcons because they have a head-to-head win over them. That's kind of, the nature of the situation. But if the Falcons turn around and get into a playoff discussion, and we've touched on this earlier in the week, what do you do with Marcus Mariota going forward? How much can you look at him and wonder if he is a long-term solution for this team? Is that fair to wonder if he's a long-term solution for this team? Because if he's good enough to get you to the playoffs, you have to wonder if he's good enough to stay here long-term. And again, you have Desmond Ridder. We all thought that there was going to be a host of quarterbacks coming out in this next year's draft and that they would have an opportunity to go out and get one. All that changes the way Marcus Mariota continues to play, continues to be a net positive for this team, and continues to keep this team in games that a lot of people don't think they should have been. Right? And you'll see that this week. The Bengals defense is not great by any stretch of the imagination. They're not terrible, but they're certainly not great. And this is a team that this year has done a good job at taking care of lesser offenses, but yet struggling with better offenses at times. They gave up 26 to the Saints last week. They gave up, dear Lord, they gave up 20 to the Cowboys with Cooper Rush at the helm. I mean, this is a team right now in the Bengals that is still trying to find their way. And I think the Bengals were primed for regression this year. I didn't think that they were a team that was going to get back to the AFC title game or anything like that. But you're going to find out what they're made of over the course of the next couple of weeks because they have a stretch of winnable games for them. I mean, their fans would sit there and tell you Falcons, Browns, Panthers, Steelers, those are all winnable games. And this is a team that's 3-3. They could be 7-3 when it's done. If they're not, they could be 6-4 or whatever it is, 5-5 even. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. So this is one of these games where on Sunday, the team that it's easy to say the team that makes less mistakes will come out with a win. But both of these teams have something right in front of them right now of winnable games ahead of them that really feel like they could set themselves up for success. What have I always said, guys? That the NFL, September is fool's gold. Don't pay attention to a record of what you see in September. October is positioning month. This is the month where teams that will start to assert themselves for playoff positioning. But ultimately, when you get to November and December, that's big boy football. The best teams show up and win the most games down the stretch, and that decides who goes to the playoffs and who doesn't. But from a positioning standpoint, but the Bengals and the Falcons both have an opportunity to position themselves to be the ones who, as they say, control their own destiny. Because the Falcons have a very winnable next 5 games after the Bengals, with the exception of the Chargers, who, oh, by the way, have to fly across the country, play a 1 o'clock game, which is always difficult. You get the Panthers twice, Bears, Commanders, and Steelers. I mean, you're sitting here even if you lose to the Bengals and you start 3-4, which is amazing, all things considered. Over the course of the next 5 games, you could be 8-4 heading into the final 5 games of the season. So, a lot there. But I'm still wondering what you're going to do with Marcus Mariota going forward, especially if he gets you to an 8-4 mark. He clinches you a postseason berth. We're having a completely different conversation about what the future of this team looks like and where they're going to go. All right. We got to hand out a shovel of wisdom as well. I'm going to put my crazy GM hat on right on top of my locked on swag hat that we're wearing here if you're watching on our YouTube channel. But first, a word from our friends at Built Bar. Guys, have you tried Built Bar Puffs yet? I've told you they're delicious. I told you they're the perfect snack for late at night or in between meals. Why? Because they're healthy. They're only 160 calories. They're packed with a whopping 15 grams of protein, but they're delicious. And their newest flavor, cookie dough chunk, is amazing. Light, chewy, real chunks of cookie dough in it, covered in 100% chocolate. This is like the perfect sweet tooth snack that's healthy for you and good for you. That's why you guys got to check out Built Bar Puffs. I mean, these are the perfect way to satisfy that sweet tooth craving with none of the guilt that you get from some of the other snacks out there. Built Bar does an amazing job at making something that tastes good and is healthy for you and covered in cookie dough chunks. I mean, who doesn't love cookie dough? Here's what you do. Go to Built.com, get a box for yourself, stash it away, hide it from the family, take it to work with you, put it in the office right there, or be the nice person who's willing to share. But go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKEDON15 and get 15% off your first order. Again, Built.com, use promo code LOCKEDON15 and get 15% off your first order of Built Bars.